The night before the wedding, another woman reminded my fiancé that he had promised to elope with her. Everyone laughed. That was the part that people remembered most vividly later. The laughter was just a punctuation mark. Not because the joke was funny, but because less than 24 hours later, I would be standing in front of over 200 people in my wedding dress, watching Jason Parker prove that he took that promise far more seriously than the promise he was supposed to make to me. At the rehearsal dinner, Morgan Reed raised her glass and grinned at Jason. "Hey, Parker. You remember our promise." Jason was drinking bourbon. Halfway down, he put down his glass and gave her that easy smile I'd seen countless times. "What deal?" Morgan clutched her chest. "Wow. I was totally devastated at 16. One of Jason's old high school friends laughed. "Oh no. Is that the escape car?" Morgan pointed at him. "Thank you, Ben. At least someone remembered." My gaze shifted from Morgan to Jason. "What escape car or something?" Jason wrapped his arms around my waist. "Nothing." Morgan laughed louder. "Not nothing. A sacred promise." She leaned over the table, her short brown hair tucked behind one ear, looking at herself with a smug expression. "Homecoming the year we graduated. Jason told me that if either of us got married, the other had the right to show up, steal them, and go for one last drive." The laughter grew louder. I didn't participate. Morgan raised her glass and walked toward me. "So, Caroline, if I showed up tomorrow and yelled, 'Run, Parker,' you can't be angry. I've been playing pranks on the groom since 2008. Jason's friends are laughing their heads off." I looked at Jason. He should see the look on my face back then. Maybe he really did. That's where the problem lay. He laughed. "Anyway." Morgan turned to look at him. "Will you still keep your promise?" Jason raised his bourbon. "A promise is a promise." My stomach clenched. "Jason." He glanced at me. "What? Don't encourage her." His smile faded. "Baby. Hurry up." Morgan leaned back in his chair, raising his hands. "Wow. The wedding dress. I'm not stressed." "Okay." She smiled at me, knowing I'd promised to bring him back. Jason smiled. I didn't. His mother, Linda, looked a little uncomfortable, but then she gave him that patient smile she'd worn for years whenever Morgan crossed the line. She was joking. "Honey." "I know." Jason put his arm around my waist. "You see, Caroline knows." I looked down at my untouched bottle of champagne. That was my territory. Knowing. Understanding. Letting go. For 6 years, I'd been taught that trust meant not reacting. So, before anyone accused me of being negative, I'd learned to swallow those emotions. I smiled. "Of course. It was a joke." Morgan raised his glass. "To Caroline. The only woman with the courage to marry this idiot." Everyone drank. Jason kissed my temple. And in that moment, I foolishly thought I'd handled it right. It wasn't until the afternoon of the following day that I realized I had spent 6 years mistaking silence for maturity. But that night, I still tried to be the kind of wife and mother everyone talked about. 6 years ago, Jason and I met at a charity home design exhibition in Richmond. I was 25, working my way up at a high-end home furnishing company. Jason was 28, confident but not arrogant, his handsome appearance instantly gaining the trust of older women. He asked me about a walnut dining table on display. I explained the craftsmanship. After listening for about 2 minutes, he said, "To be honest, I don't care about that table." I raised an eyebrow. "Then why are you still standing here?" "Because I'm figuring out how long I need to pretend to care about you before inviting you to dinner." I laughed. He laughed. That was Jason. He always managed to make a bad remark sound charming. The first few years went well. Not perfectly. Okay. He met my parents early on. My father, David, liked him because Jason wouldn't pretend to know things he didn't. My mother liked him because he always brought something with him when he visited. When Jason introduced me to his parents, Linda hugged me before dessert. His father, Robert, asked about my job and listened attentively to my answers. The second Christmas we spent together, my stockings were hanging in the Parker's house. By the third Thanksgiving, Linda no longer asked if I could bring anything, she simply texted me her shopping list. I didn't mind. I like belonging. The day Linda had knee surgery, Jason was away on a business trip the morning of one of her follow-up appointments. I took a day off and drove her there. When Robert retired, I spent 3 weeks contacting his former colleagues, collecting photos, and preparing a surprise dinner. That night, Jason stood beside me, one arm around my shoulder. "You're so good to us," he whispered. I smiled. "I love you." I know. Those words warmed me at the time. Later, I would think back to how effortlessly he said them. I know. As if my love were a permanent infrastructure. Always there no matter how many times he leaned on it. Morgan has always been part of the team. She and Jason met in high school. She played softball. He played baseball. They had the same group of friends. The same bad stories. The same jokes only others understood. The first time I met her, she shook my hand, looked me up and down, and then patted Jason on the shoulder. "My God. Parker. She's so beautiful for you." Jason smiled. Morgan grinned at me. "Don't worry. I'll tell you all his embarrassing stories." She was outgoing, funny, and easy to like. I liked her too. That was important. I never felt Morgan posed a threat to me from the start. I didn't see her on the other side of the room and immediately think, "That's another woman." Initially, there were no dramatic warnings. Just small things. So small that I felt unreasonable every time I brought one of them up. The first real argument happened on my 28th birthday. Jason had made a reservation at a restaurant in Churchill that I'd wanted to try for months. We'd just finished our appetizers when his phone rang. He glanced at the screen. "Morgan." He ignored me. I laughed. "Look at you. What? Refusing to call the emergency hotline." He laughed. Then the phone rang again. His smile vanished. He answered. "Morgan." I saw his expression change. "What happened?" Pause. "Where are you?" Another pause. "Okay. Stay there." He hung up. I already knew. Jason. She and Ryan had a fight. So. She's at a bar downtown now. She has friends. She called me. I stared at him. "It's my birthday today." "I know." Then I sat down. He frowned. "Caroline. She's been drinking. Get her an Uber. She's upset." "Me too." "That's not fair." I actually laughed. "That's not fair." He looked around. A little embarrassed by my volume. "Please lower your voice." "No." "Explain. Why is it unfair that I want my boyfriend to stay for my birthday dinner?" "That's not what I meant." "You stand up." "I'll be back later." 20 minutes. Morgan seemed to live in a world where everything took 20 minutes to complete. Picking her up took 20 minutes. Helping her move the sofa took 20 minutes. Starting her car took 20 minutes. Because her recent boyfriend had disappointed her, she had 20 minutes to leave the restaurant. Jason reached for his coat. I didn't stop him. That was the first mistake I realized then. He returned 2 hours and 17 minutes later. The table had been cleared. The dessert I'd ordered for myself was gone. I was holding a cup of coffee, filled with anger. But this anger gave me a strange sense of calm. Jason plopped down in the chair opposite me. "Sorry. Is she okay?" He hesitated. "She's okay. Of course. Caroline." "What happened?" "She's emotional." "Did you drive her home?" "Yes." Then she wanted to talk. I nodded slowly. "So you sat in the car talking?" "Yes. For 2 hours. That sounds strange." I glanced at him. "I'm just recounting what happened." He rubbed his forehead. "She's my friend. I know she's your friend. So what's the problem?" "The problem is, it was my birthday." I said. "I'm sorry. If this happens next year," he said, staring at me. "What do you want me to say?" "I wish you could say that sometimes I should prioritize." His expression turned serious. "This isn't a game. That's what people say when someone always loses." He leaned back. "Wow. What? You're jealous." I felt my face burning. "I'm not jealous." "Then why are we doing this?" "Did she call you?" "She needs me." "I need you tonight." He gritted his teeth. "Morgan isn't like other women." "Caroline." I remember I froze completely. "What does that mean?" "You know what I mean." "No." I didn't. "She didn't have that intention." "What was the intention?" "She wasn't trying to seduce me." "I didn't say she was." "Then stop pretending." I stared at him for several seconds. He reached across the table. "Please. Don't ruin your birthday with this." "My birthday." As if I messed it up. I pulled my hand back. This should have been more important. The next morning, Jason showed up at my apartment with coffee, flowers, and breakfast from my favorite bakery. He apologized. "I guess so." He said he should have called. He said he should have come back earlier. He kissed me and promised we'd make dinner again. Because I loved him. I accepted the apology I could get at the time. I complained about Morgan a second time. And things got worse. Early one Saturday morning, I went to Jason's apartment. I had a key. We were planning to drive to Charlottesville for the day. I went in and heard the shower. Then Morgan came out of the kitchen. She was wearing black leggings and one of Jason's old Virginia Tech sweatshirts. I stopped. She paused for a second. Neither of us said anything. Then Morgan looked down at herself. Oh. I'd been staring at that sweatshirt for a while. She smiled. Relax. I didn't say a word. I'd accidentally spilled beer on myself last night. Ben had invited some friends over at Jason's. Because I'd parked outside. Jason drove me back. And you slept on the couch here. She gestured to the living room. One end of the blanket was twisted. Before I could react, Jason emerged from the hallway, drying his wet hair with a towel. Hey, you're early. I glanced at him. Morgan used to live here. He barely reacted. Yes. Wearing your clothes. Morgan made a face. My God. If it's really that bad, I can take it off. Jason frowned. Morgan. What's up? She looked at me like I'd committed a heinous crime. I don't have any particular feelings for you. Morgan grabbed her purse. Great. Crisis over. She patted Jason's chest gently as she passed him. Thanks for saving this drunkard. Bro. Then she looked at me. Enjoy your Charlottesville trip. The door closed. I turned to Jason. Before I could speak, he sighed. That sigh was almost more heartbreaking than anything else. He was exhausted from the conversation we hadn't even had a chance to have. You could have told me it was late. You could have texted me. You were asleep. But that never stopped you from texting me. Caroline. Have you ever thought about how uncomfortable I might feel if I walked in and saw another woman wearing your clothes? She was asleep on the couch. That's not my point. What are you trying to say? My point is to set boundaries. He threw the towel on the chair. She needed somewhere to stay. She couldn't go home. She was drunk. She couldn't get a ride. I gave her one. She couldn't go to another friend's place to pick up trash. A hotel. He pursed his lips. You're here again. What are you doing? Making a mess of everything. I felt like he slapped me. I didn't say you slept with her. You didn't have to. What I'm asking is why there are no rules when it comes to Morgan. Because I've known her for almost 20 years. That didn't answer the question. Yes. That's true. No. Jason. That explains why she's important to you. That doesn't explain why she can do whatever she wants. He turned his face away. You know what? Maybe we shouldn't have gone today. I really stared at him for a while. You canceled our plans because I said I wasn't feeling well. I didn't want to sit in the car for 3 hours being interrogated by you. I left that time. He called later. I didn't answer the first 2 times. On the third call, he said he loved me. He said he hated arguing with me. He said Morgan had always been a part of his life and always would be. Then he asked if I trusted him. This question became his most frequently used weapon. Do you trust me? Faye said yes. I should have stopped objecting. Faye said no. I became the problem. And so I got the answer he wanted. Of course I trust you. Linda inadvertently reinforced this. One Sunday evening after dinner, she found me alone in the kitchen cleaning up the leftovers. How are you and Jason? I paused. Why? He mentioned that you two had disagreements about Morgan. Of course he did. I closed the fridge door. I just felt they needed better boundaries. Linda's expression softened. Oh. Darling. I immediately hated that response. They'd been friends since their teens. I knew Morgan had always been that kind of person. I know she's a bit rough around the edges. But she's harmless. I crossed my arms. Would you feel comfortable if Robert had a female friend calling him in the middle of the night, dressed in his clothes, and expecting him to cancel your date? Linda opened her mouth, then closed it again. For a moment, I thought I'd finally gotten someone to understand. She just sighed. Marriage requires confidence. I said nothing. You can't hold a man too tightly. Caroline. If you trust Jason, give him some space. I wonder why no one ever told Morgan to give me space. I didn't. That's the pattern. Morgan crossed the line. I reacted. Someone explained why my reaction was the bigger problem. Then I apologized for creating tension. It happened in the passenger seat too. The 3 of us were heading to a friend's barbecue. Jason parked outside my apartment. Morgan was already in the passenger seat. She saw me. Winked. Then she smiled and opened the door. Oh. Right. Fiancé privilege. I pulled over. Jason looked embarrassed. Morgan. Please. What? I'm moving. She climbed into the back seat. I barely sat down when she leaned in between the seats. Enjoy it. Hey, I've been using this seat since high school. She was joking. That's always been their excuse. Jason laughed. I didn't. Later, when I told him it bothered me, he said, she moved. Didn't she? As if respect only counted after I asked. But I stayed because there were good days too. That's the part people never understand when they ask why a woman can tolerate something for so long. Bad relationships aren't bad all the time. Jason proposed to me on Blue Ridge Highway, with my mother's blessing and my father nervously agreeing. He cried before I did. He told me I was his home. He told me he couldn't imagine life without me. I believed him. At our engagement party, Morgan hugged me. Then she held up my hand and whistled at the ring. Damn. Parker. Looks like you're really retiring. Jason smiled. I forced myself to. A year later, 3 weeks before the wedding, after midnight, Morgan was still texting Jason. Even though the date hadn't gone well, she still called him husband number 2. Still telling stories that started before Caroline was even born. I began to wonder if I was marrying a man or joining an arrangement whose rules had been set before I even arrived. Then came the rehearsal dinner. The arranged pick-up and drop-off. The laughter. After everyone started leaving, I found Jason outside talking to one of his groomsmen. I waited until we were alone before leaving. Jason. He immediately looked exhausted. Please don't do this. This made me even angrier. I didn't say anything. You're planning to bring up Morgan? Yes. He sighed. Caroline. Tomorrow's our wedding. Can we not do this tonight? That's why we have to do it tonight. He put his hands in his pockets. That was a joke. Then say it again. He narrowed his eyes. What did you say? If she does anything tomorrow, you stop her. Jason stared at me. I continued. No laughing. Don't go with the flow. Don't embarrass me because you don't want to hurt her feelings. His expression changed. Do you really think I'd skip my own wedding? I ask you to answer me. This question is ridiculous. It should be simple. It's simple. Then answer it. He took a step closer. Caroline. I'm marrying you tomorrow. I know. There will be 200 people. I know. My parents have been going crazy over flowers and seating arrangements for the past month. I know. So. Stop. I stared at him. Stop what? Looking for a problem. My throat tightened. I wasn't looking for one. Yes. You are. No. I'm asking my fiancé not to leave our wedding even if another woman asks him to. He let out a short, unfunny laugh. Listen to what you're saying. Yes. He shook his head. Then reached for me. I almost took a step back. Almost. Instead, I let him pull me closer. He kissed my forehead. You're marrying me tomorrow, he said. Don't worry about Morgan anymore. His voice was soft and certain. I wanted to believe him more than myself. So I nodded. Okay. Okay. Yes. He smiled. That's my girlfriend. I should have hated that. Instead, I let him kiss me. The next morning, Mom saw me in the dress and cried. My father stood in the doorway, covering his mouth. Dad. Give me a second. I smiled. You promised you wouldn't do that. Elite. He came over, kissed my forehead, then looked at me intently. Are you sure? I smiled. About the dress. About the man. I stared at him. He tried to force a smile, but his eyes remained serious. I thought of Morgan. Of the birthday dinner. The sweatshirt. The passenger seat. The midnight phone call. And the promise at the rehearsal dinner. Then I remembered Jason proposing. His hands trembling as he presented the ring. I remembered Christmas morning. His parents. 6 years ago. When we discussed the house we wanted to buy. When we joked about names for our children. And then slowly stopped joking. Yes. I said. Dad looked closely at my face and nodded. Then I agree with you. 10 minutes later. A bridesmaid walked into the room. Caroline. I turned around. Her face looked strange. What? She looked out the window. Someone had just stopped a car. Before she could speak, my heart sank. Who? She didn't answer. Then I heard a car horn. Once. Twice. A burst of laughter erupted outside. Not polite laughter. The kind of excited, loud laughter that comes when people realize something absurd has happened. I went to the window. Caroline. My mother said behind me. I looked down. An old red convertible was parked in front of the church. Morgan Reed was in the driver's seat, wearing white trousers and sunglasses. one hand on the horn. She leaned over the passenger seat and called out towards the church entrance. Jason Parker. The laughter grew louder. Some cheered. Morgan stood up in the car. This is my last chance to regain my freedom. My father swore. My mother whispered. My God. My fingers went numb. For a moment. I couldn't move. Then I saw Jason. He went outside. One of his best men said something to him. Jason looked at Morgan. Morgan dramatically pointed to the empty passenger seat. Everyone was waiting. Me too. Because after 6 years of arguments, excuses, apologies, and him making me trust him, deep down I still foolishly believed that this moment was finally Jason's turn to choose me without hesitation. He would shake his head. He would tell Morgan to go home. He would turn around and go back inside. Jason ignored Morgan, looked at the car, looked at Morgan, and then smiled. I didn't know then that by the end of the day, I would be canceling my wedding, dancing with another man in front of Jason's entire family, and returning the ring I thought would define my life. But standing by the window, wearing the veil I'd spent months choosing, I still thought the worst thing was Morgan showing up. I was wrong. The worst thing was seeing my fiancé so happy about it. Jason's first reaction upon seeing Morgan's red convertible was to laugh. The second thing he did was walk towards her. That's when I started moving. I don't remember how I left the bridal suite. I only remember my father calling my name behind me and my mother grabbing my skirt to keep me from falling. When I reached the church door, Jason was already halfway down the steps. Jason. He stopped. Morgan saw me and pushed her sunglasses up her head. Oh. Hi, bride. A few people laughed awkwardly. I ignored her. Jason. Come back. He gave me a look. Like he always did when he thought I was overthinking things. Caroline. Relax. This statement shocked me more than I had imagined. Don't tell me to relax. Morgan leaned against the passenger door. Come on. Hayes. It'll take 20 minutes. I glanced at her. Nobody asked you. Her smile vanished. Jason immediately frowned and glared at me. Hey. I turned to look at him. No. You have no right to hate me now. He lowered his voice. Can't we just not do this in front of everyone? I almost laughed out loud. Morgan. In a white suit. Driving a convertible to our wedding. Yelling in front of 200 people that my groom should elope with her. Somehow, I'd be the one causing trouble. Then back inside. Jason glanced at the car. That tiny gesture was enough. My chest tightened. You're actually considering this. My God. He rubbed his chin. It was just a joke. So. Learn to say no. I told her I would do this years ago. You told me last night you wouldn't give up our wedding. I won't give up anything. You turned and left in your tuxedo, while I stood here in my wedding dress for 20 minutes. It happened again. What? 20 minutes. His face tightened. Caroline. I reached out to take his hand. I didn't care how desperate it looked. I didn't care who was watching. Please don't do this. He seemed a little uncomfortable for a moment. Not guilty, but uncomfortable. As if my pain was becoming socially inconvenient. He glanced at the crowd gathered near the door. Then he leaned closer. You put me in a difficult position. I stared at him. I put you in a difficult position. I promised her. That was so absurd I almost didn't understand. About me. He frowned. What about you? What did you promise me? He opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Morgan honked the horn. Several of Jason's young friends called his name. Parker, come on. Jason glanced back. I gripped his hand tightly. He glanced back at me. Don't mess things up. Something deep inside me became strangely calm. I made it look awful. You know what I mean. No. I don't really think so. Everyone was watching. Exactly. He let out a heavy sigh. Then he started to remove my hand from his. Not all at once. One finger at a time. I watched him do it. My index. Middle. Ring. And finally my thumb. He wasn't angry. That was worse. He was calm because he genuinely believed I'd still be there when he came back. 20 minutes, he said again. Then he walked down the steps. Morgan raised her arms. Yes. People laughed. Someone clapped. Jason got into the passenger seat. Morgan glanced at me. Then put her sunglasses back on. She smiled. A smile devoid of apology. Filled with the joy of victory. Then the car drove away. After that. No one laughed. The silence behind us seemed endless. My father moved out first. That bastard. Dad. He's already heading towards the parking lot. I'll bring him back. No. He turned away. His face was flushed. Caroline. No. My voice sounded calmer than I felt. My mother came to my side. Oh. Dear. That almost broke me. Not the car that left. Morgan didn't smile. My mother called me baby. I turned my face away, not wanting the tears to fall. Linda Parker stood near the church door. Her face had turned completely pale. Caroline. I glanced at her. 4 years. Linda had told me to trust Jason. To give him some space to understand that Morgan had always been there for him. Her son had just married Morgan. Linda opened her mouth, then closed it again. This time, she offered no advice on how to be forgiving. Robert stood beside her, looking like he wanted to disappear into a hole. I'm sorry, he said. I swallowed hard. He did nothing. That only made his apology more hurtful. People started whispering. My bridesmaids gathered around me. One of them, Megan, looked furious. Do you want us to clear everyone out? Another person asked. Should we call the venue? Someone said. We can postpone the ceremony. Postpone. That word almost made me laugh out loud. I was standing in front of the church. My fiancé had already driven away with another woman. And people were still gossiping as if the wedding plans could still be salvaged. Then, a man's voice came from my right. Caroline. I turned around. Ethan Cole was standing a few feet away. I'd known Ethan since I was a kid. He'd grown into the kind of guy who drew attention the moment he walked into a room. He was 6 feet 1 inch. Broad-shouldered. Always composed. And the CEO of a commercial real estate company that seemed to have his name in Richmond's business magazine every month. But Ethan had never caused any problems in my relationship. Now it seemed that this was more important than I had realized before. Ethan hadn't called me late at night since Jason and I started dating. He hadn't asked me out to dinner alone since I got engaged. When I invited him to the wedding, he replied that he would attend and sent gifts on his behalf and his company's behalf. Because, as he said, I didn't want to be the kind of person who would leave my fiancé wondering why I was driving Crystal alone. He always understood boundaries and didn't need me to explain. Now he looked at me. Not at the road Jason had disappeared down. Morgan University didn't have that problem. He didn't say to me, I told you so. He didn't ask if Jason was mentally unstable. He didn't touch me. He just asked, do you want to leave? My throat tightened. I looked back at the church. My parents. My relatives. My colleagues. Jason's family. Friends who had flown in from Atlanta, Chicago, Boston. And all the people who had spent money on plane tickets, hotels, dresses, and gifts because they loved me. I looked down at my wedding dress. Months of fittings. Months of planning. Months of finalizing napkin colors, seating arrangements, and flower choices. Because I thought this day should mark the beginning of my life with Jason. Ethan spoke again. Or do you want to take this day back? I glanced at him. What? His expression didn't change. You have 2 choices. You can leave. And no one will blame you. He paused. Or you can decide not to let him take it all day. Something deep inside me changed. Not yet healed. Far from it. But the direction had changed. I reached up and pulled off my veil. My mother gasped softly. I folded it in half and handed it to her. Then I looked at Ethan. I wanted it back. He nodded. Okay. That's it. No grand speech. No guarantee of a fix. Just SOSO. I walked back to the church. The whispers stopped. I asked the pastor for the microphone. He looked hesitant. Caroline. Are you sure? No. This stunned some people. I took the microphone anyway. My hands were shaking. I could feel it. I knew that if I waited until they stopped shaking, I might never be able to speak again. There wouldn't be a wedding today. A woman in the second row covered her mouth. Someone whispered something behind her. My God, I continued. But the reception was still going on. People looked confused. I glanced at my parents. The cake had been paid for. The band's expenses had been paid for. Half of you had come from all over the country for this event. My voice suddenly choked. I forced myself not to let the atmosphere become tense. Then watched someone leave. I swallowed. I wouldn't pretend that this meant everyone who stayed had suddenly stopped matching. My father covered his mouth. My mother started to cry. I looked around. So, if you'd like, I'd like to have a meal with those who really came to support me. Silence. Then my aunt stood up. I stayed. My cousin stood behind her. Me too. Megan raised her hands. I came for the free drinks anyway. People laughed. This time, they really laughed. Don't hold it against me. The pressure in my chest eased a little, allowing me to breathe. The receptionist didn't know how to greet us at first. I didn't know at first either. But when the doors opened and people started moving, the momentum was unstoppable. I didn't change anything except the seating arrangement. Jason's seat card was missing. Morgan's shop never existed. My father came over when the band announced the cancellation of the first dance. He held out his hand. No. Not yet. I glanced at him. Dad. You bought the music. I forced a laugh through a sore throat. He raised an eyebrow. You're going to let an old man stand here. You're 63. Old. I took his hand. The dance was halfway through. He leaned closer. I could still kill him. I burst out laughing. Not before dinner. After dinner. I'll check my schedule. That's my girlfriend. When the song ended, everyone applauded. I hugged him. For the first time since Jason got into Morgan's car, I realized I wasn't waiting for him to come back. It should have felt better than it actually was. No. Not yet. The band started playing another song. People went to the floor. Ethan stayed at the edge of the room. I noticed that too. He wasn't lingering nearby. He didn't want to make himself the center of attention in a story that had nothing to do with him. Yukid. Are you planning to guard a wall for the entire reception? He smiled slightly. I felt safer. Dance with me. His smile vanished. Caroline. What is it? You don't need to prove anything. I'm not. I looked him straight in the eye. I want to dance. He stared at my face for a moment. Then held out his hand. Okay. Let's dance. Nothing much happened. His hand rested gently on my waist. My hand rested on his shoulder. There was a distance between us. Halfway through the song, I realized I was gripping him too tightly. Ethan noticed. Do you want me to stop? No. Are you sure? Yes. He nodded again. No questions. No pressure. We finished the song. Just then, the reception door slammed open. The music played for another 2 seconds. Then someone near the entrance called out Jason's name. I turned around. Jason stood in the doorway. His tie was loose. His hair was ruffled by the wind. Morgan was behind him. Jason looked around the room. The guests. The cake. And my parents. Then looked at me. His gaze fell on Ethan's hand on my waist. His face changed instantly. What the hell was this? Silence fell over the room. Ethan immediately withdrew his hand and took a step back. Jason stepped across the floor. Making a fuss. Let go of my fiancé. Ethan didn't answer. He didn't need to do this. I turned to Jason. Why? He stopped. What? Why would he do this? Jason stared at me as if I were speaking another language. Caroline. Ethan is my friend. Jason's jaw tightened. Now wasn't the time. He danced with me. I understood. His voice rose. You're standing here in a wedding dress. And another man's hand is on you. I almost laughed. Not because anything was funny, but because after 6 years, the hypocrisy was finally laid bare before me. I couldn't believe I'd ever gone to such lengths to explain this. He placed a hand on my waist. That's not the point. What's the point? Jason glanced around the room. Can we talk privately? No. A glint flashed in his eyes. Caroline. You left me in front of everyone. You can offer a public explanation. Morgan took a step closer. My God. Can't we all calm down? We've been gone for about 40 minutes. I glanced at her. 43. Jason whirled around to me. You timed us. No. Linda's voice came from behind him. I did. Jason turned around. His mother was standing next to Robert. She didn't look like the woman who asked me to make room for her. Jason swallowed. Mom. She didn't respond. I glanced back at him. You're angry because Ethan and I danced. You know perfectly well why I'm angry. No. I'm not. Yes. You are. I shook my head. For 6 years. You've told me it's normal for Morgan to drink your coffee, wear your clothes, call you after midnight, sit in your passenger seat, and pull you away from my birthday party because she's your friend. Morgan crossed her arms. Oh. Please. I didn't look at her. I kept staring at Jason. You told me that if I trusted you, I shouldn't care. His face flushed. It's different. Why? Because it's true. How about it? He opened his mouth. Nothing. I took a step closer. Ethan's my friend. Jason looked at Ethan with hostility. That guy's been having a crush on you for years. Ethan's expression didn't change. I tilted my head. Jason stared at me. Are you serious? Yes. His voice became sharp. Do you think I'd accept him touching you? I nodded slowly. It was there. The rule was finally showing. I was careful with my words. You spent 6 years telling me everything between you and Morgan was perfectly normal. Jason's expression froze. So why does it suddenly become inappropriate when the same thing happens between me and other men? No one spoke. Jason looked around, as if he thought someone else might answer for him. Morgan smiled awkwardly. Caroline. This is ridiculous. I turned to look at her. She held up her hands. It was a joke. We went for a drive. That's it. A joke. Yes. You came to my wedding in a white wedding dress. This is a pantsuit. You made my groom leave for 20 minutes. 43. She rolled her eyes. Fine. 43. Whatever. Then she laughed. Stop. Seriously. Don't ruin your marriage over this. Before I could answer, another voice rang out. Don't call her that. Morgan froze. Jason too. Linda took a step forward. She was pale, but her voice was calm. Morgan. This isn't your day. Morgan blinked. Linda. No. I'd never heard Linda talk to her like that. Never. Morgan looked at Jason. He looked just as shocked. Linda turned to her son. And you? Jason swallowed. Mom. She lost control. No. You got in the car. I'm coming back. That's not the point. It's stupid. Okay. I know. Linda stared at him. A man who leaves his bride alone on the wedding stage to entertain another woman isn't ready to be a husband. Jason's face paled. Mom. Robert turned his face away. Morgan opened her mouth. Linda pointed toward the door. Do you think you should go? Morgan looked angry. Me. Yes. This is insane. No, Linda said softly. What happened today is absolutely insane. Morgan laughed heartily. Then she looked at Jason. Are you coming? I watched his face. For 6 years. I had witnessed this question control him in 100 different forms. Are you coming? Can you come to pick me up? Can you help me? Can you choose me? Even for just a second. Let me know I still matter. Jason looked at Morgan. Then at me. He hesitated for the first time. Morgan's expression turned serious. Seriously. Jason didn't answer. She scoffed. Any. She turned and walked out. This time. Jason didn't follow. He glanced back at me. Caroline. I reached for my left hand. He lowered his eyes instantly. No. I'm the one who took the ring off my finger. No. He walked towards me. I held up one hand. He paused. I looked at the diamond I'd worn almost every day for 14 months. I remembered the proposal. The tears. Our plans. The life blueprint I'd once believed in so deeply. Then I placed the ring in Jason's palm. His fingers gripped it involuntarily. The wedding won't be postponed, I said. Caroline. His face turned ashen. It was Jared. He stared at me. You didn't mean that. Did you? I almost felt sorry for him. Because he truly believed it. He thought this was another argument. Another boundary I would eventually clarify. Another pain I needed to learn to live with. He could apologize to me after I calmed down. But for the first time in 6 years, I didn't think about what Jason wanted me to understand. I kept thinking about my final understanding of him. Judging from the panic beginning to show on his face. He was just realizing that I might not be coming back this time. Jason called me 17 times before midnight. By the 18th call, he had stopped apologizing. His first voicemail was, Caroline. I messed up. Please call me back. The fourth person said, Morgan. Nothing happened. You know that. By the 9th, his voice had become sharper. You can't really end 6 years of suffering in 40 minutes. By the 17th, his tone sounded almost offensive. We're all adults. You have to stop punishing me at some point and talk to me properly. That's when I finally understood one thing. Jason still thought I was angry. He had no idea I was over. I stayed at my parents' house that night. My wedding dress was hanging in the upstairs guest room because I couldn't face it. My phone lit up again. Jason. My mother looked across the table. You don't have to answer. I know. My father scoffed. I will answer. Dad. What's up? I have some ideas. Even so. I almost laughed. Mom nudged his arm. David. He muttered something and continued drinking his coffee. I stared at Jason's name until the call ended. Then a message appeared on the screen. We need to talk. The second one appeared next. You embarrassed me in front of everyone. I stared at that for a long time. My father noticed my expression. What did he say? I put my phone screen down. It didn't help. A minute later, another message came in. I'm back. Caroline. This should obviously be important. After leaving the reception area, I picked up the phone for the first time and started typing. You shouldn't have left. His reply was almost immediate. I know. I apologized then. But nothing happened between Morgan and me. I read that sentence twice. I had heard about this in some form for 6 years. Nothing happened. Morgan just slept on the sofa. Morgan was only wearing a sweatshirt. Morgan didn't call until after midnight. Morgan just sat in the passenger seat. Morgan just pulled him away from my birthday party. Morgan just kicked him out of our wedding. Nothing happened. I typed in. Something did happen. You chose her. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, and then reappeared. Finally. It lasted for 40 minutes. I laughed once. My mother looked at me. What? Apparently. Betrayal has a time limit. I typed in the message. That's all. Jason called again. This time I answered. Finally. He said. No. Hello. No. Are you okay? I just breathed a sigh of relief because I was finally back to the role he wanted me to play. Where are you? My parents. Go home. No. He was silent. Caroline. Hurry up. I said no. We need to talk in person. We're talking. He let out a heavy sigh. I won't do this over the phone. Then don't do it. It's there. The thrill. Whenever my feelings last longer than Jason considers reasonable, he becomes the person I know best. I apologized. You said you messed up because I messed up. You also told me I embarrassed you. You did. I actually took the phone away from my ear for a second. When I put it back, I asked you about dancing with Ethan. I closed my eyes. Of course. You know exactly what that looked like. Jason. You left our wedding with another woman. When I came back, I found myself still there. That's what you're really angry about. Isn't it? What does that mean? Did you think I'd wait? He didn't answer. I continued. You thought I'd hide in some room crying until you came back. And then you'd apologize. And I'd be grateful you came back. I didn't expect that. So what do you think will happen next? He was silent for a moment. Then finally said. I thought you'd be angry. And then we'd work it out together. It was there. The assumption behind everything. Not hope. I asked. Are you sure? Why? What? Why are you so sure I can get through this? Because we love each other. No. Try again. He was quiet. I could hear his breathing. Then he said. Just like you always do. My eyes burned. Jason seemed to realize he'd admitted something. Caroline. You misspoke. No. I think it turned out all right. I hung up. The next morning, I canceled our honeymoon. Jason had already booked the flights. I booked a hotel in St. Lucia. I called the resort, explained the wedding was canceled, and went through the refund process with unusual calm. Then I opened the wedding expense spreadsheet I'd made earlier. For over a year, I'd been tracking savings, balances, guest numbers, and supplier deadlines. Jason used to tease me about it all the time, my terrible little project manager. Now, that spreadsheet had a different meaning. It was irrefutable proof of who owned what. My grandmother's dining table was mine. All those framed original prints in the apartment were mine. The dressing table in the bedroom was bought before we moved in together. My work computer, of course, came with me. Half the kitchenware was a gift from my parents before the engagement. I never intended to strip the teddy bears out of the apartment. I wasn't interested in getting revenge through kitchenware. I just wanted my things back. That afternoon, I texted Jason. I'd be at the apartment at 10 a.m. the next day to collect my personal belongings. Megan and my dad were coming with me. He called immediately. I declined. Then came a text. You don't need an audience. I replied. I do. The next morning, Jason opened the apartment door before I even had a chance to unlock it. His hair was a mess. He was wearing yesterday's t-shirt. And he had dark circles under his eyes. In that stupid moment, my heart reacted before my brain. 6 years hadn't just disappeared because I wanted them to. He glanced at my father and Megan behind me. Seriously. Dad stepped forward. Barry. Dad. I warned him. He stopped. Jason looked at me. Can we be alone for 5 minutes? No. He gritted his teeth. Caroline. I'll pack the bags. You seem to think I betrayed you. I don't want to talk about this anymore. You keep saying that because you don't want to admit how ridiculous it is. Megan made a sound behind me. I didn't look at her and held up a hand. Jason stepped aside. Beautiful. I went inside. The apartment looked almost exactly the same as when I left on the morning of my wedding. Except for the champagne bottles on the counter and the 2 takeout boxes by the sink. I ignored them. I went straight to the dining room. Jason followed. What are you doing? Moving my grandma's table. He stared at me. What? The movers were coming in 20 minutes. A mover? Yes. His face changed. You've already hired a mover. I booked it yesterday. Jesus. Caroline. I opened the cupboard and started taking out grandma's cutlery. Jason grabbed the cupboard door. Stop. I looked at his hand. Then at him. He let go. Are you really moving out? I'm moving out. No. You're not. My father walked into the room. She just said she was. Jason turned around. Excuse me. Sir. You're paying. This is a secret between Caroline and me. Dad raised an eyebrow respectfully. So. You abandoned my daughter in front of 200 people. Letting everyone know. Dad. He recoiled. But only physically. Jason rubbed his face with both hands. Caroline. Please. The anger vanished abruptly. He looked terrified. This was the first time I'd seen that expression since the reception. I knew I'd messed up. I continued packing. How stupid. I wrapped a ceramic bowl in paper. I was caught up in everyone's laughter and cheers. Another plate. Morgan challenged me. I stopped. Jason saw this and took a step closer. She dared to mess with you. I mean, this whole thing is completely out of control. No. I heard that. He frowned. What? You're 34. Your explanation is that Morgan provoked you. That's not what I meant. That's exactly what you're trying to say. I picked up another plate. He followed me. I'm going to cut ties with her. I froze behind me. Megan didn't move. Jason continued to walk quickly. No more late night calls. No more picking her up. No more being alone. Anything you want. I turned around. You're doing this? Yes. For me. Yes. I stared at him for a long time. Then I asked. Why didn't you do anything when I asked you to do these things before? He opened his mouth. Nothing came out. That's the problem. Jason. You didn't respect boundaries. Boundaries that could have protected me. You're making this request now because you're afraid of losing something. That's not fair. It's happening again. What? Fair. I shook my head. You know what's unfair? You spent 6 years making me explain why I felt uncomfortable. And you treat Morgan's feelings like a natural disaster no one can control. He stared at me. Then his gaze fell on the boxes. Are you taking the coffee machine? I almost laughed out loud. A coffee machine. You bought it. Yes. Caroline. What? You know. I use it every morning. I glanced at him. He looked genuinely annoyed. That brief gesture was worth more than all his apologies. He didn't just want me to stay. He wanted my things. My habits. My reminders. My labor. And my ability to make his life run smoothly. You can buy another one, I said. He looked shocked. The movers arrived 20 minutes later. By noon. Most of my belongings were gone. I left the sofa because we bought it together. And Jason wanted it. I left the TV. I left most of the kitchenware. I didn't want him to leave an empty apartment. But as I stood in the doorway with the last suitcase, Jason looked around as if the place had been ransacked. Where are you going now? My parents. After that, I'm going to look at the apartment. His face went blank. You're looking for an apartment? Yes. Already. I stared at him. How long should I wait after the wedding is cancelled? He hesitated. I went out. 3 days later, Linda called. I almost didn't answer. Caroline. Her voice sounded cautious. Hello, Linda. A long silence. I wanted to say hello. I'm fine. I don't believe you. I smiled wearily. We were thinking the same thing. She was quiet. Then she said. Robert missed his heart appointment yesterday. I frowned. What? He thought it was Friday. Jason thought it was next week. My first reaction was immediate. I'd put this appointment on the family calendar months ago. I stopped. There were no more calendars in the house. Not for me. Linda must have heard the silence. She said softly. I know. Is Robert all right? Yes. We rescheduled. Okay. Another pause. Then she said. Jason feels like you're always reminding him. I closed my eyes. Linda. I didn't ask you to do that. I knew. But there seemed to be something in her tone. An epiphany. Everything I did before the wedding was done quietly. Because it always happened in a predictable pattern. A reminder. A birthday dinner. A shopping list. A retirement party. A Christmas present picked out in October instead of December 23rd. Nobody considered it labor until I stopped doing those things. Linda's birthday was next week. Of course. I'd known the date for the past 4 years. I prepared dinner for her. I did nothing. At 9:30 p.m. that night, Jason called. I stared at the screen for a while before answering. What did you call Mom? Yes. You did. He'd been silent all morning. Then he swore you'd forgotten. I've been busy lately. Did she really? I know. I waited a moment. He finally asked. What did you buy for her? I couldn't believe the question. Nothing. You always buy her gifts. Jason. What's up? I'm not your fiancé. He was silent. I continued. That means I won't be organizing your mother's birthday party. I didn't ask you to manage it. You just asked me what I bought. I thought you might already have something. No. He sighed. That's what I meant. You're too cold-hearted. No. I'm letting you handle your own family matters. You're not that kind of person. That sentence tightened my chest. Not me. As if taking care of others meant I lost the right to stop taking care of them. You can't define me by what I've done for you in the past. I hung up. 2 days later, Megan sent me a screenshot. Morgan posted a photo taken at a bar. Jason was with her. The caption read, "Some people take life too seriously. I'm glad I still have friends who would die for me." I stared at it for a long time. Strangely, I didn't feel jealous. I felt tired. The next morning, Linda called again. This time, she sounded angry. Did Jason contact you last night? No. He came with Morgan. I sat up straight. What? He took her out to dinner. I couldn't help myself. I laughed. Linda didn't. Not funny at all. No. I'm sorry. He said he hoped people would stop treating her like a criminal. And Morgan? She spent half of dinner on her phone. Sounds right. Linda lowered her voice. Robert asked if she was planning to help Jason with Thanksgiving this year. I waited a moment. Linda let out a laugh that wasn't funny at all. Why would I do that? It's a family matter, she said. I closed my eyes. It was there. The honor Morgan had always enjoyed. Important enough to interrupt family life. I had never had enough responsibility to support it. That night, Jason seemed to have found out too. I only learned the details later. I didn't find out until 11:40 p.m. My phone vibrated. It was a message from him. I think I finally understood what he wanted to tell me. I didn't reply. On the other side of the city, Jason was sitting in Morgan's apartment. For the past hour, he had been complaining about his parents, the cancelled honeymoon, the empty room in our apartment, and the fact that I no longer answered his calls. Morgan was already annoyed. According to Jason, she finally threw her phone on the sofa and said, "Dude, I'm fed up with hearing you talk about Caroline every night." Jason stared at her. "I thought you cared about me." "I did. So what did you do for me?" "My family. Everything." Morgan actually laughed. "That's not my job." For the first time in nearly 20 years, Jason looked at the woman he had always called his best friend and asked the question that should have terrified them both. If Caroline really was gone. He swallowed. What were we anyway? Morgan's smile vanished. 3 days after Jason asked Morgan what they were, Morgan's answer shattered his last remaining illusions. "I never wanted to be your wife." I hadn't heard those words myself. Linda later told me about it. Jason eventually repeated enough of the conversation that I was able to fill in the rest. But even before I knew what Morgan had said, I sensed something had changed. Jason stopped calling me. For almost a week. My phone went silent. I should have felt relieved. Instead, the silence made me uneasy. 6 years had made me used to seeing his name on the screen. On Friday afternoon, Morgan texted me. "Are you satisfied now?" I stared at that message for a long time. I almost deleted it. Then another one appeared. He was a complete mess. But somehow it became someone else's problem. I typed. "You wanted his attention. You got it." The 3 dots appeared almost immediately. "I wanted my friend." I stared at those words for a long time. Then I wrote. "Me too." She didn't reply. Later, Linda told me what had happened. Jason went to Morgan's apartment after dinner with his parents. He would call her for days on end when he couldn't sleep. At first, Morgan would answer. But then she started putting the calls to voicemail. When he finally confronted her, she was apparently opening a beer. If Caroline really leaves, what are we then? Jason asked. Morgan stared at him. What are you talking about? You know what I'm talking about. No. I didn't. Jason's frustration had been building for days. You want me to choose you? Morgan laughed. I didn't. You drove to my wedding. You jokingly asked me to get in the car. And then you got in. You know what that will do. She shrugged. Jason. You're an adult. Linda said that sentence had infuriated him. You can't do that. What? Pretend it's none of your business. I didn't force you into my car. You know Caroline hated how we used to be. Morgan rolled her eyes. She hated everything. No. She didn't. I was surprised when Linda repeated the sentence. Clearly, Jason was finally starting to correct the story he'd been telling himself for years. Morgan crossed her arms. She was jealous. She begged me not to leave our wedding. Obviously. But I left anyway. Morgan's face turned serious. And then, be angry with yourself. Jason stared at her. You keep asking me to prove you're important. I never said that. You don't have to. He started listing things. My birthday. The late night call. Her wearing his clothes. The front row seats. The wedding. Morgan finally slammed her beer down on the counter. My God. Jason. What do you want from me? I want to know why. Why? What? Why? You always have to be number one. She stared at him. He took a step closer. If you really care that much, why don't we try? Morgan blinked. Try what? She actually laughed. Not at all friendly. Jason's face changed. You think this is funny? Yes. Because you're crazy. You want me to choose you. I hope you don't just disappear every time Caroline snaps her fingers. Caroline is my fiancée. Exactly. He frowned. What did that mean? It meant she wanted all the boring romance. Jason froze. What boring stuff? Family dinners. Vacations. Plans. Greetings. Talking about parents' doctors. Buying gifts. Coordinating schedules. Morgan waved her hand. All of that. Jason stared at her. That was our life. No. That was your life with Caroline. What do you want? Morgan hesitated. That brief pause before she spoke told him everything. He asked again. What do you want from me? She sighed. I loved everything we had. What did we have? You were the most important person to me. He laughed. But there was no humor in his laughter. What did that mean? It meant if I called, you were there. And if I needed you, I was there. You were. Weren't you? Morgan's lips tightened. Jason nudged her. My dad missed his cardiology appointment. Did you help? That's not my responsibility. My mother had a birthday dinner. Did you help? Again. It's not my job. I invited you to my parents' house because they barely speak to me anymore. So I came. You spent the whole dinner on your phone because it was awkward. He stared at her. Then he asked softly. Would it still be awkward if we were together? Morgan's expression changed. No. Jason chuckled. Wow. Don't do that. What? Turn it into a romantic story. You showed up at my wedding to steal me away. It was supposed to be funny. You've told every girlfriend I've ever had that you know me better than I do. I do know you better. You act like no one can replace you. Because no one can. So be with me then. Morgan took a step back. No. Why? Because I don't want to. His voice lowered. What do you want? She looked frustrated now. As if he was deliberately refusing to understand something obvious. Jason. I don't want to be your girlfriend. He didn't say anything. I don't want to plan your mother's birthday. I don't want to remind you of your father's appointment. I don't want to spend Thanksgiving with your cousins. I don't want you calling me every night because you're upset. She picked up her beer again. I never intended to be your wife. Jason just stared at her. Morgan's tone softened slightly. You're my friend. No. His voice was soft. And she frowned. What? You expect me to be on call all the time. That's not fair. You expect me to be on call all the time. To meet your every need. And you expect Caroline to accept that. Morgan turned her face away. Jason continued. You like knowing I'll choose you. She didn't answer. And right now, I really need someone to choose me. You don't want this job. Morgan's jaw tightened. Your actions have nothing to do with me. At least that's true. I'm glad she said that. Because despite my resentment towards Morgan, she never stood before the pastor promising to marry me. Jason did. Morgan could cross any line at will. It was Jason who kept the door open. By the time Linda told me all this, I already had a bigger problem. My father was in the hospital. It happened Tuesday morning. I was at work, looking at promotional samples, when my mother called. I was in a meeting and almost let the call go to voicemail. Then I realized she had called twice already. I stood up. "Excuse me." I answered the question in the hallway. "Mom." "Caroline." Her voice sounded off. I stopped. "What happened?" "Your dad has chest pains." My whole body trembled. "Where is he?" "BCU Medical Center." "Is he conscious?" "Yes. They're testing him." "I'm coming." I was about to grab my wallet when my boss walked down the hallway. "Come on," she said. I don't remember saying anything to her. "I'll cover for you." "Thank you." In the parking lot, my hands were shaking so badly that I dropped my keys. Then I did something I hate to myself. I'd opened contact intuition for Jason for 6 years. If anything happened to my family, Jason was the first person I'd call. My thumb hovered over his name. I could almost hear his voice echoing in my head. "I'm coming." "Where are you?" "Do you need me to pick up your mom?" In that dangerous moment, I actually wanted to find that familiar him again. Then I remembered a sentence. I promised her. I locked my phone. I drove there myself. When I arrived, Dad was already awake. He looked more annoyed than scared, which was typical of him. He said, "This is ridiculous." Mom got angry as I walked in. "You had chest pains then?" "I have a box. Sometimes it hurts." Dad looked at me. "You too?" "Yes. Me too." He muttered a few words. Everyone was particularly dramatic today. I felt a huge weight lifted off my shoulders, my legs almost giving way. I hugged him carefully. He patted my back. "I'm okay. You don't know yet." "I know my body." Mom crossed her arms. "You still feel heartburn for 45 minutes. And it's spreading to your left arm." Dad looked at me. She'd been rude to me all morning. She must be a traitor. I laughed. Then I cried. Dad's face immediately changed. "Oh, darling. I'm okay. Come here." I hugged him again. My phone vibrated in my pocket. For a moment, I thought it might be Jason. Not. "Ethan. Megan told me about your dad. Need anything?" I stared at the message for a long time. My first instinct was to refuse. In the past few weeks, I'd become quite adept at saying no. "I'm fine. I understand. Don't worry about me." Then Mom glanced at the untouched coffee beside her and said, "I haven't eaten since 6. I texted Ethan. "Mom needs food. I don't want to leave." "Dad." He responded immediately. "Got it." 40 minutes later, Ethan appeared with sandwiches, coffee, bottled water, and a phone charger. He handed everything to Mom. Before he could stop her, she hugged him. "You're an angel." I brought a turkey sandwich. "Mrs. Hayes, let's set our expectations a little more realistically." She smiled. Dad pointed at him. "Finally. A normal person. You're the one who tried to drive himself to the ER." This information was supposed to be kept secret within the family. Ethan looked at me. "Are you all right?" I nodded. He didn't ask again. He didn't touch me. He pulled up a chair against the wall and sat down, quietly replying to emails on his phone. When the cardiologist came in, Ethan stood up. "I'll give you some privacy." Before anyone could stop him, he left. Dad's test results were finally reassuring. No heart attack. They wanted him to stay overnight for observation and to schedule follow-up tests. At 10 p.m. that night, Mom was already asleep in the chair next to him. I walked down the hallway. Ethan was still there. I stared at him. "Why are you still here?" He looked up. "You might need a ride. You've been here for hours." I noticed. "You run a company. It survived Tuesday." "Even so." I smiled. He stood up. "Is your dad all right?" "They think so too." "Okay." I leaned against the wall. I was finally exhausted. "You didn't have to stay." I knew this wasn't the answer. This was all I had. I glanced at him. 4 years. I'd known Ethan liked me. It wasn't because he publicly confessed, but because once when we were both 26 and single for about 5 minutes, he almost kissed me. Then Jason came into my life. And Ethan faded into the background. No games. "No. I knew you first." "Nothing," I asked. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course. Do you still love me?" His expression froze completely. I almost laughed out loud from nervousness. This was subtle. Hmm. Caroline. Answer me. He glanced down the hallway. Then turned back to me. Yes. My throat tightened. Then why don't you try? He frowned. Try what? When? A hint of annoyance flashed across his face. You're not a contract. You know what I mean. Yes. I am. He put his phone in his pocket. The answer was no. No. I wouldn't do that. Why? He stared at me for a second. Then his voice softened. You just ended a relationship where the other person spent years telling you what you should put up with. I said nothing. I won't become another person telling you how to choose. These words stung more than I expected. I turned my face away. Ethan continued. Because I care about you. I won't use the worst month of your life to get the answer I've wanted for years. My eyes burned. It sounded infuriatingly noble. He smiled slightly. I have flaws too. Go ask my CFO. I smiled through my tears. Then I shook my head. Jason always said you wanted me. I did. I did. I glanced at him. He met my gaze. But liking you doesn't give me the right to have you. I was speechless. This terrified me more than I'd be willing to admit. Because I suddenly saw the difference. Morgan had been demanding proof of her importance for years. Ethan had been trying for years to make sure his feelings would never be a burden to me. One was called friendship that crossed boundaries. The other was restraint and respect. My phone vibrated. This time it was Jason. I heard about your father. Is he all right? I stared at the screen. Ethan deliberately looked away. I answered. He's stable. Jason replied. I can come. I typed. No. 3 dots appeared. Caroline. Please. I put my phone away. Ethan didn't ask Jason what he wanted. Instead, he said, Want some coffee? Yes. The awful hospital coffee. Or the slightly better lobby coffee. Take your pick. He nodded and turned to leave. For the first time since we got married, I felt afraid. Not romantic. Not even that. It was a lack of security. A week later, Jason went to see his mother. Linda said he looked very tired when he arrived. He didn't ask how she was doing, but sat down at her dining table and said, I need you to talk to Caroline. Linda continued folding her napkin. No. Jason blinked. What? I said no. You didn't hear me at all. You want me to convince her to get back together with you. Jason leaned forward. I made a mistake. You made several mistakes. I know. You know. I know. Then why are you here? Because she'll listen to you. Linda finally looked at him. What do you want me to say? An apology. I understand now. Go talk to her yourself. She won't talk to me. Then maybe that's your answer. Jason gritted his teeth. So, you're just taking her side. Linda put down her towel. There shouldn't be any bias at your wedding. He turned his face away. I said, I'll stop Morgan. Linda's expression turned serious. If you still think Morgan is the whole problem, then you still don't understand what you've done. What else do you want from me? Nothing. That answer clearly shocked him. Linda continued. I hope you stop asking women to clean up your messes. Jason was silent. 3 days later, Linda texted me. Can we grab a coffee? Just the two of us. I promise I won't pressure you about Jason. I almost refused. But then I remembered all the years I'd spent sitting at her kitchen table, helping her plan holidays, doctor's appointments, birthdays. So I said yes. We met Saturday morning. Linda was already there when I arrived. She looked exhausted. Not angry. Not defensive. Just exhausted. I sat down opposite her. Hi. Hi. Honey. She paused. Sorry. It's okay. She held a cup of coffee in both hands. Untouched. We were silent for a few seconds. Then I said, It's about Jason. Yes. My stomach clenched. Linda immediately shook her head. But not the way you think. I waited. She took a deep breath. Her eyes welling with tears. Then, this woman, who had been advising me to be more understanding of others for the past 6 years, looked me straight in the eye and said the most unexpected thing. I owe you an apology. I owe you an apology. For 6 years, Linda Parker had told me to be patient, to be confident, to trust Jason, and to understand that Morgan had known him longer than I had. So, when she sat across from me, tears welling in her eyes, and said those 5 words, I truly didn't know what to do. I clutched my coffee tightly in both hands. You don't have to apologize for what Jason did. I didn't. Her answer was too quick. I looked up. Linda swallowed. I apologize for what I did. I didn't say anything. She looked down at her hands. When you first told me Morgan made you uncomfortable, I told you not to hug Jason too tightly. I remembered that conversation clearly. Leftovers. Her kitchen. Her compassionate smile. Marriage requires confidence. Linda shook her head. I thought I was helping. I know. No. Her voice choked. You're being nice to me again. Please. I was stunned. She took a deep breath. I need to say it myself. I don't need you to help me. Those words caused me a completely different kind of pain. Because she was right. Even now, deep down, I still wanted to help her get rid of her guilt. Linda continued. You've told me the whole story. My throat tightened more than once. Every time she said, I found another reason why you should be more understanding. She wiped her eyes. I told myself Morgan was harmless. I told myself Jason was loyal. I told myself young girls these days are too suspicious. A strong relationship requires trust. She gave a bitter smile. What I really meant was that it's much easier for you to tolerate this than for my son to change. It's there. This is the truth I've longed for someone to say for years. Linda looked directly at me. I've been begging you to be more forgiving because dealing with your discomfort is easier for me than dealing with Jason's behavior. I blinked sharply. I couldn't speak. She kept going while you complained. You remained calm. You explained everything. You still came for Thanksgiving. You still went with me to our appointment. You still helped Robert organize his retirement dinner. Her lips trembled. Jason adopted a defensive stance. Morgan shouted. You're easier to get along with. I turned my face away. The words stung me because they were so familiar. Reasonable people are always asked to give more because everyone knows they're likely to. Linda leaned forward. Then I watched my son carefully remove your hands from his arms. One by one. My eyes burned. She noticed. Of all that happened that day, this one was, for some reason, unforgettable. I saw your face. She whispered. I know. I swallowed. Know what? He fully understood how much he had hurt you. She shook her head. He just thought you would forgive him. My chest tightened. He thought so too. I know. Linda hesitated. He told me. I gave her a sharp look. What? He came to see me again. I leaned back. Linda sighed. He kept asking himself what to do to resolve this. You can't tell him anything. I told him. This surprised me. She gave me a tired smile. He was unhappy. I was sure of it. He said he would cut off all contact with Morgan. I glanced down at my coffee. That's not the point. I know now. Her tone made me look at her involuntarily. Linda nodded slowly. That's what I told him. We were both silent for a few seconds. Then she reached across the table for something. She stopped. Without touching me. Even that brief hesitation was crucial. Can I? I nodded. She placed her hand in mine. I'm sorry, Caroline. My eyes welled up. Not because I wanted you back with Jason. I glanced at her. Not because I wanted my family back together. Her fingers gripped mine tightly. I'm sorry I helped my son realize how much patience you have. That opened a crack deep inside me. I wiped my cheeks. Linda started to cry too. I'm so glad you're part of our family. I love you too. So much. I gave a wry smile. You know what I mean. She nodded. Then she said. Anyway, Robert misses you terribly. That made me laugh until I cried. He missed my pecan pie. He said. Yours is better than mine. It really was. She gasped. That's how she was. For the first time since the wedding, being with Linda didn't feel like standing in the ruins of my past. To be honest, it felt like saying goodbye to a part of my past. Before leaving, she squeezed my hand. I would be so grateful if you could forgive me someday. I have forgiven you. She blinked. But forgiveness and going back to the past are two different things. Her eyes softened. I knew it was important to distinguish between the two. 3 weeks later, Jason showed up at my new apartment. I had finally rented a place in the museum district. It wasn't big, but it felt like my own place. It wasn't big enough to make me feel like my life was shrinking. I opened the door and stared at him. How did you know my address? He looked embarrassed. My mom. I folded my clothes. She gave it to you. No. I saw it on an envelope at their house. Of course. Jason. Please. 5 minutes. He looks different. He's thinner. His hair hasn't been cut in 6 years. I've seen him tired. Sick. Angry. Drunk. Excited. Half asleep. I've never seen him hesitate like this in front of me. Now. He looks like he's unsure if I'll let him finish. I should have closed the door. But I didn't. Instead, I went to the hallway and closed the door. You're not allowed in. He flinched. Okay. What do you want? He looked at me for a few seconds. Then he said, I know. I frowned. Know what? That day. His jaw tightened. At the church. I'm waiting. He lowered his head. I know you'll get hurt. I felt a deep silence. Jason rubbed his hands together. I kept telling myself I didn't understand how bad this would be. I didn't say anything. But it was all nonsense. His voice lowered. I know. I finally know. It wasn't Morgan who forced me to do this. Not everyone laughed. Not everyone laughed. I thought it would last 20 minutes. Just telling the truth. You know. I repeated. Yes. Then why did you leave? He closed his eyes briefly. Because I thought you would forgive me. That's it. This answer extinguished the last glimmer of hope in my heart. Was there any way we could salvage the relationship? I nodded. Jason jerked his head up. That's why I came. I understand now. No. His face darkened. Caroline. It was that sentence that prevented me from marrying you. What? You knew I would be hurt. I knew. And you thought my pain was bearable. He shook his head. I was so stupid. You thought 5 minutes of Morgan's disappointment was worse than humiliating me at my wedding. I'm not defending you. You're still trying to blame everything on that one decision. He stared at me. I continued. Jason. That wasn't a decision. It was the same decision for 6 years. It's not fair. I almost laughed out loud. As soon as the words left my mouth, his face changed. I'm sorry. No. Go on. That's not what I meant. It was you. I took a step closer. Every time Morgan wants something and I feel uncomfortable, you always find a way to turn my discomfort into a problem. I can change that. You should change it. A glimmer of hope flashed across his face. For us. No. The hope vanished. For the next person. He stared at me. I don't want anyone else. But that doesn't mean I have to want you. He looked at me as if I had punched him. Caroline. Please. He reached out to grab me. But stopped. I'll go to therapy. That's a good idea. I'll cut ties with Morgan. If you think it's worth it, then do it. We can move. I frowned. What? Charlotte. Raleigh. Anywhere. Start over. You think Richmond is the problem. No. You think moving to another city will make 6 years pass. I just want you to know I'm willing to do anything. This isn't love. He frowned. What? Doing anything after losing me is different from respecting me when you had me. He was silent. My heart softened involuntarily. Jason. I believe you regret it. Really. I believe you're in pain. His eyes reddened. Yes. And I believe this might actually make you a better person. He looked at me desperately. Then why won't you give me another chance? Because your growth doesn't necessarily have to happen in my life. He stared at me. I had never expressed my feelings so clearly. After a long silence, he asked softly, Is it because of Ethan? I closed my eyes. Of course he would ask that. No. He loves you. I know. Jason's face turned serious. Are you going to pretend this has nothing to do with it? Ethan and I aren't together. At least not yet. I looked at him. That's the kind of thinking that ruined us. He frowned. What? You still think it must have been another man who caused this? I shook my head. I didn't leave you because Ethan was waiting for me. My voice was calm. I left because I finally stopped expecting you to care about me. Jason said. There was no response. He left 5 minutes later. I cried after locking the door. Not because I wanted him back, but because I had once wanted him to be with me forever. This wasn't the same. Ethan never asked what had happened. Megan must have told him Jason had come, because he texted me that night. Are you okay? I replied. Not so good. His reply was, Need company or space? I stared at those words. Another choice. Always a choice. Company. He came with Thai food and 2 bottles of sparkling water. No flowers. No wine. No smug look. He sat on the floor because I didn't have enough furniture. This apartment is too unfriendly for adults over 30, he said. You're a commercial real estate genius. Fix it. Ideal for office buildings. You don't have a sofa. That's not my area of expertise. I laughed. He opened the food. We ate. He didn't bring it up until I mentioned Jason. He admitted he knew. Ethan stopped chewing. Know what? No, he hurt me. His expression turned serious. He just thought I would forgive him. Ethan put down his fork. This was worse. I know. He didn't say anything more. I looked at him. Shouldn't you tell me you've always known Jason was an asshole? No. Why not? Because you love him. So, insulting him is insulting the woman who chose him. I was silent. Ethan shrugged. People are complicated. It's a frustrating kind of health. I've had therapy. I laughed. Really? 3 years for what? Work, family, and general emotional instability. The last one sounded serious. Almost fatal. I laughed again, realizing something uncomfortable. Being with Ethan had become so easy. Too easy. So, I distanced myself from him. Not the kind of drastic distance. I just got busier. Work helped me a lot. My company was working on a big project with a luxury home developer expanding in Virginia and North Carolina. This client was important. If we landed it, I'd be in charge of one of the biggest projects of my career. When I saw the developer's name, I almost cursed. Cole Commercial Realty. Ethan's company. I called him immediately. You did this. He sounded confused. What for? To add my company to your project. No. Ethan. Caroline. I didn't. You expect me to believe your company just happened to be considering my employer? Yes. Because we've worked with your employer twice before. I paused. That's right. I didn't know. Obviously. I lowered my voice. If you have any say in choosing us, I'm out. He was silent for a moment. Understood. 2 days later, my boss called me into her office. We got the client from Cole's company. My stomach clenched. She smiled. There was something else interesting. What? Ethan Cole officially shirked the supplier selection. What did he do? He left the entire selection process to his COO and the purchasing team. She looked at me curiously. Apparently, he revealed a personal relationship with one of our managers. My face flushed. What personal relationship? Years of friendship. I sighed. My boss smiled. He explained it very clearly. Of course. He would do that. That night, I called Ethan. You avoided it. Yes. You didn't have to. Yes. I avoided it. Why? He sighed. Caroline. No. Answer me. I didn't want you to doubt whether you deserved the contract. I stopped. He continued. I didn't want anyone else to doubt it either. My throat tightened. You make it hard for me to doubt you. I'll try to change that. Over the next few months, things changed between us. Not overnight. It surprised me. There was no passionate kiss in the rain. No heartbreak miraculously turning into a new romance. We had dinner together, went out together, watched baseball together, had coffee together after get off work, and chatted. But these conversations never ended with me explaining my feelings. One evening, I was having dinner with Ethan when I found him sitting with a woman about our age. My body reacted before my brain. And I felt embarrassed. She was beautiful, elegant, and confident. Ethan immediately stood up. Caroline. This is Rachel. And this is Gwen. She's the lead architect for the Manchester project. Rachel smiled. I've heard some good news. Hopefully. It's just work-related. She smiled. My wife says Ethan only talks about work after 5. As if summoned, another woman approached the table. Rachel waved. She's here. I felt ridiculous. Later, after Rachel and her wife left, Ethan looked at me. You were quiet when you came in. I wasn't. You were quiet. I was tired. Okay. That's it. Don't accuse me of jealousy. And don't ask me to prove I trust him. I looked at him. You're not going to ask. Are you? Ask what? Whether I mind seeing you with other women. He raised an eyebrow. Mind. A little. He nodded. Okay. I blinked. That's it. What do you want me to do? Judge you. I stared at him. Ethan leaned back. If anything makes you uncomfortable, tell me. And we'll talk. It's that simple. Usually. I almost laughed out loud because it felt so revolutionary. Months passed. A year passed. Jason faded from people's sight. At the center of my thoughts. Not entirely. Some people leave your life but don't disappear from your memory. Linda still texts me occasionally. Robert sent me a picture when he finally learned how to make pecan pie. Morgan had almost completely disappeared from my life. Ethan was still there. He never rushed me. Never asked when I was ready. Which eventually became a problem. One Friday evening, as we were leaving a restaurant, I finally stopped on the sidewalk. When are you finally going to ask me out? Ethan nearly bumped into me. What? You heard me right. He stared at my face. Then he laughed. I crossed my arms. What's so funny? I've spent a year trying my best not to pressure you. Now you're angry because I didn't pressure you. I'm not angry. You look angry. I'm just a little annoyed. That's much better. Ethan. His smile vanished. Are you sure? That was the important question. I took a deep breath. I think so. He looked me over carefully. Not because you owe me anything. No. Not because Jason hurt you. No. Not because you, Mom, thought I was handsome. I smiled. She really did think I was handsome. I knew it. I took a step closer. I wanted to try. A warm glint flashed across his face. It wasn't the joy of victory, nor the relief of finally defeating Jason. Just pure happiness. Okay. I'll wait. He'll wait too. Finally. I spoke up. What's up? Ask me. His lips twitched. Caroline Hayes. Would you like to have dinner with me Friday night? I stared at him. We just had dinner. Next Friday. This is a big decision for you. I've been waiting for years. I can get through another week. I couldn't stop laughing and had to look away. He still didn't kiss me. At least not that night. That was later. Slowly. Carefully. Just when I wanted it to. Almost a year after our first official date. Ethan took me out to dinner on an ordinary Thursday. No crowds. No photographers. No huge signs. After dinner, he took my hand and asked me a question. Would you like to spend your life with me? Then he opened a small ring box. My heart stopped for a second. All I saw was another ring. Another man. Another promise. Ethan saw my expression change and immediately closed the box. No. I blinked. What? He put the ring away. You don't have to answer tonight. Ethan. I'm serious. He held my hands. If you need a day, then a day. If you need a month, give me another month. His voice remained calm. If the answer was no, I could get through it. My eyes instantly filled with tears. He smiled. I asked this question because I want to marry you, Caroline. Not because I need you to prove anything. I looked at him. At this man who could have taken the initiative but chose to wait. Who could have been competitive but chose to back down. And who even gave me space when the answer mattered most. This time, I knew clearly what kind of marriage I had chosen. So I smiled. I do. His eyes widened. I do. I do. He smiled and took out the ring again. However, just as he slid the ring onto my finger, neither of us expected that on our wedding day. Just minutes before I was about to walk towards him, Ethan's phone would ring, an emergency that would make even a CEO drop everything. In that terrifying moment, I would be standing there again in a different wedding dress, worried that history would repeat itself. 10 minutes before the second wedding, Ethan's phone rang. His best man looked at the screen. Then at Ethan. And then, his expression changed. Cole, you have to answer this call. In that instant, I felt like I was 31 again. I was standing there in a different wedding dress. Another room full of people waiting for me. Another man had somewhere else to go. My body reacted before my brain. My fingers were ice cold. Ethan noticed immediately. What is it? He asked his best man. Richmond Building. The anchor tenant's legal team just backed out of the revised lease. They're threatening to withdraw their investment entirely if no one calls now. Ethan gritted his teeth. This project had already taken his company almost a year. This was one of the biggest business deals they'd ever handled. His COO had flown in 2 days ago because Ethan had made it clear he couldn't attend the wedding. The best man lowered his voice. They want the CEO. The phone rang again. No one spoke. I looked at Ethan. He looked at the screen. My heart started racing. I hated this. I hated how a phone call could so quickly bring back long dormant memories. Ethan saw my expression. He moved a little closer. Are you okay? I almost lied. It was my instinct. Don't be so tense. Be understanding. Don't pressure him into making a choice. But I said, I don't know. His expression softened. The phone kept ringing. I glanced at it. If you need to, answer it. Ethan didn't move. It sounds serious, I added. It is serious. I swallowed. Then maybe you should answer it. No. I looked at him. He took the phone from the best man. Only for half a second. I thought he was going to answer. But he pressed the side button to turn off the phone. Then handed it back. To Marcus. His best man winked. Your COO. Yes. He's already in touch with the legal department. Good. Ethan. They're looking for you. And they have some capable people in their company. His best man glanced at me quickly. Then nodded. I'll tell them. With that, he walked away. I stared at Ethan. What if they lose their tenants? Then we lose our tenants. That would be terrible. Yeah. What if it costs your company millions? He tilted his head. Are you trying to persuade me to cancel my wedding? I smiled nervously. No. That's good. But what if it's really an emergency? He reached out and took my hand. It wasn't a strong grip. Just a light one. And I could feel his thumb against my knuckles. Caroline. I looked at him today. I promised you. My throat tightened. I couldn't say anything. Jason had stood before me, saying the exact opposite in every important way. I promised her. 4 years. I'd thought the measure of love was how much inconvenience I was willing to endure. Ethan looked at me as if the answer were simple. Because it truly was for him. I blinked hard. You know what? You've set a very high bar for every anniversary from now on. He laughed. I'm willing to take the risk. You could at least pretend to be worried. I'm worried about the company. No. He leaned closer and asked. Were you going to cry before I saw you complaining about your makeup all morning? I laughed. And he patted my arm. That's expensive makeup. Exactly. Someone outside called that we had 5 minutes left. Ethan squeezed my hand. Do you still want to marry me? I stared at him. You're only asking now. I like to confirm important things at the last minute. I narrowed my eyes. That's the least romantic thing you've ever heard. I know. Yes. His smile changed. Yes. Yes. Ethan. I still want to marry you. Good. He kissed my forehead. Because I'd already told everyone the lunch fee wasn't refundable. I smiled again. And the panic subsided. Our wedding was smaller than my first. This was intentional. For my first wedding, I spent months worrying about the guest list, the number of tables, distant relatives, business friends, and whether everyone would feel valued. This time, I only cared about feeling valued at my own wedding. We had family, close friends, and people who were there for us through the toughest times. Not just those who only showed up for the good old days. My parents were in the front row. Linda and Robert Parker were there too. Inviting them had surprised some people. When I told Megan, she stared at me. Your ex-fiancé. Your ex-future-in-laws. It's not surprising at all. They're important to me. Megan's expression softened. Okay. Linda almost refused. She called me after receiving the invitation. Caroline. Are you sure? Yes. I don't want Jason's past to affect your wedding. You're not Jason. She fell silent. I continued. You and Robert were family to me for 6 years. Yes. You know what I mean. She sniffed. Does Ethan think this is okay? If he didn't, I wouldn't have invited you. This was another difference. I didn't tell Ethan. I invited them. Accept reality. I asked. He thought for a moment and said. Do you want them to come? Yes. Then invite them. You really don't mind. They care about you. I waited. He smiled. Caroline. I don't want to compete with a relationship that's over. Those words kept echoing in my mind. At the wedding, Linda found me before the ceremony began. She stopped when she saw me, covering her mouth with her hand. Oh. I smiled. Okay. Oh, she smiled through her tears. It's really good. Oh, she cautiously approached. For a moment, neither of us knew whether to hug. Then she opened her arms. I stepped into her embrace. She held me tightly. You look beautiful. Thank you. She released me, her gaze lingering on my face. You look happy. I didn't hesitate. Yes. Her lips trembled slightly. That was all I wanted to know. She hadn't said I should be her daughter-in-law. She hadn't told me Jason still loved me. She hadn't entrusted her son's regrets to me. She had just gently touched my arm and said, Robert's already crying. Be prepared. I hadn't even walked down the aisle yet. He's a very emotional man. Robert. A familiar voice came from behind her when no one was looking. I heard it. Robert came over. He looked a little older and gentler than when I first got married. He hugged me. Child. He said, almost making me speechless. Hi, Robert. He cleared his throat. Someone told me not to make things awkward. Linda sighed. I didn't say that. The look you gave me just now. What look? The look of a married man. I laughed. Robert's eyes turned serious. You've been so good to our family. I swallowed hard. You used to be my family. He nodded. You still can be. My gaze changed as I looked at him. He added. My eyes stung. I hugged him again. Thank you. He patted my back. Anne, I finally know you can book a heart appointment with your phone. Linda rolled her eyes. What a revolutionary invention. I'm so ahead of my time. That made me laugh. It also reminded me of something important. The Parker family continued to thrive after I left. Jason, too. That had been important. After leaving him, I'd secretly wondered if loving someone meant being indispensable to them. The answer was no. Love isn't about making yourself indispensable, but about being chosen even when everyone is capable of independence. A few minutes later, my father came to pick me up. He stared at me for a moment, then immediately looked up at the ceiling. No. I smiled. Dad. I promised myself I wouldn't do it again. You cried last time too. Last time was different. His expression changed. We both knew what he meant. He held out his arm. Ready? Yeah. He didn't move. Really ready. I looked toward the door. Ethan was there. No Morgan. No tests. No questions about who was more important. Just someone who had already proven himself before I even reached him. Yeah. Dad nodded. Let's go. Halfway down the aisle, I saw Ethan. He wasn't looking at the guests. Not checking on the assistant. Not even at his phone. He turned and looked at me. I'd seen men cry when they saw their brides in movies. But Ethan wasn't. He smiled first. Then his jaw tightened. And he blinked rapidly. I whispered to Dad. He's crying. Dad whispered back. Good. I'd been worried he was emotionless. I almost laughed out loud. Ruining my entrance. Dad placed my hand in Ethan's. Not letting go immediately, but looking at Ethan. I have something to say, David. Mom whispered from the front row. Dad ignored her. Ethan nodded. Okay, sir. I don't need you to promise you'll never let her down. Ethan glanced at me. Fine. Because I might actually let her down. Several people laughed. But Dad didn't. I need you to promise me something else. Ethan's expression turned serious. What? When she tells you she's hurt, don't let her feel like she's stupid for being hurt. My throat tightened. Ethan looked at Dad. Then at me. I can. Promise me. Dad nodded. That's settled then. He kissed my cheek and sat down next to Mom. The ceremony began. I heard words like marriage, partnership, choice, commitment. But I didn't think about their legal implications. What I was thinking about was how these words felt so different now. The first time I planned a wedding, I spent so much energy proving I was ready to be a wife, ready to compromise, ready to trust, ready to integrate into a family, ready to understand. This time, I didn't need to prove anything. When it was my turn to speak, I looked at Ethan. He squeezed my hand. I used to think love was mainly about patience. I said. His lips twitched slightly. I know. That's a romantic opening. Everyone laughed. And I continued. I used to think that if I loved someone enough, I should always look on the bright side. Let go of some things. Avoid turning forgivable things into problems. Ethan's expression softened. I still believe forgiveness is important. I took a deep breath. But I knew that boundless love doesn't make a relationship stronger. Sometimes, it just teaches people how much pain they're willing to endure before leaving. No one laughed. I looked at my parents. Then at Linda and Robert. Linda wiped away her tears. I turned to Ethan. You've never asked me to prove I trust you. My voice trembled slightly. You make it easier for me to trust you. His eyes welled up. That's what I promised to do for you. Ethan's vow was concise. It was typical of him. He said. I can't guarantee I'll always say the right thing. I laughed. Right. Another burst of laughter. But I can guarantee you won't have to guess whether you're important to me anymore. That sentence hurt me more than I expected. I'll tell you the truth. Even if it's inconvenient for you. Even if the answer isn't what I want. I'll listen. I'll make room for your life before I came along and for the life you want with me. He paused. I said I'd come. And I will. My eyes welled up. He knew. Of course. He knew. He didn't need to mention Jason. He really didn't need to. Not mentioning that name was a gift in itself. We were announced as husband and wife. People cheered when Ethan kissed me. My father's cheers were louder than anyone else's. At the reception, I noticed Linda looking around, seemingly searching for something. I went over and asked, Are you all right? She nodded, then hesitated. Jason asked me something last week. I was taken aback. Ethan was on the other side of the room talking to my uncle. He glanced at me but didn't interrupt them. What did Jason ask? Linda seemed uncomfortable, unsure if he should be there. I stared at her. He wanted to come to my wedding. He didn't ask for an invitation. She shook her head quickly. He knew he wasn't invited. He asked if he should come to the manor to see you later. Just to see you. I guess. She didn't know. What did you say to him? Linda looked directly at me. No, something inside me loosened. He said he needed closure. I smiled slightly. Of course. He does. Linda nodded. I told him. Today isn't about him closing things up. I looked at her. She continued. I told him he doesn't deserve to turn your milestone into his own lesson. I was speechless for a moment. Thank you. He didn't like it. I think he definitely didn't. But he listened. I glanced at the entrance. I wasn't afraid he'd show up. Nor did I have any illusions about him showing up. This surprised me. There was a time when I hoped Jason would see me happy. I fantasized that he would realize what he had lost. Seeing Ethan beside me. Watching me walk on. But standing there. In my wedding dress. I realized my happiness didn't need anyone's witness. Especially not him. How is he? I asked. Linda thought about the question carefully. I nodded. He's been in therapy. That's good. He and Morgan hardly speak anymore. Hearing that, I felt almost nothing. She moved to Denver last spring. That's good. Linda smiled bitterly. He finally admitted something to Robert. What was it? Morgan wasn't the reason you broke up. I'll wait. He said Morgan just revealed what kind of person he'd become. This surprised me. Linda nudged my arm. He regrets it. I knew. I didn't tell you because I thought you should care about me. I knew. She looked at Ethan. I think Jason finally understands that regret and making amends are two different things. I followed her gaze. Ethan was helping my mother fix the clasp on her bracelet. No dramatic scene. No romantic gestures. Just helping. I was glad he understood. And I genuinely felt that way. Not because it changed me, but because maybe it would change the next person who loved him. Later, Ethan and I danced our first dance. His hand was on my waist. Just like when my first wedding was cancelled. I remember Jason bursting into the ballroom. Get your hands off my fiancé. I smiled. Ethan noticed. What? Nothing. That smile wasn't simple. I remembered our first wedding dance. He raised an eyebrow. Our first one. The one where I didn't marry you. Oh. He made a face. That was. What a strange day. You handled it well. I was terrified. I smiled. What about you? Well. Afraid of Jason. Afraid of you. I stared at him. Why? Because you were hurt. I knew that if I did something wrong, I would be part of the shame, not part of your support. This shocked me. You actually thought of that. Of course. You barely touched me. That was intentional. I understand now. He laughed. We moved slowly to the music. Then I asked. Do you know what's funny? What? 4 years. I thought being a good partner meant proving I trusted the other person. Ethan nodded. And now, I felt being a good partner made trust easier to build. He laughed. Sounds less tiring. It was. My cheek briefly rested on his shoulder. After the song ended, my father pulled me into another dance. My mother and Ethan danced. Robert insisted they remembered how to swing, which embarrassed Linda. They didn't remember at all. For the first time in years, I was surrounded by people connected to every stage of my life. And it all felt completely natural. This is what healing looks like. I realized it wasn't about forgetting or erasing those people, but about reaching a point where remembering them no longer changed your direction. Night fell, and Ethan and I left the crowd for a while. He loosened his tie. You're exhausted. Regret getting married. Ask me after I take off my shoes. He laughed. I looked at him. His phone was finally back in his hand. I nodded at the phone. Did the building burn down? No. Tenants moved out? No. Company went bankrupt? Surprisingly, no. So, your COO handled it? Yes. I laughed. Interesting. What? It's like you're not the only one in the world who can solve problems. Don't tell my board. I laughed. Then I fell silent. Ethan. Thank you. Thank you for what? Thank you for staying. His smile vanished. He understood what I meant. He took my hand. Caroline. There's something I need you to know. What? If I had answered that call, I wouldn't have automatically become Jason. I blinked. He continued. If there's ever an emergency that I have to skip dinner, cancel a trip, or change plans, I want you to tell me. Even if it makes you sad. I stared at him. I didn't want our marriage to become a test where I had to do everything the opposite of what he did. My throat tightened. You're right. I want us to make this decision together. He ran his thumb through my ring. Not out of fear of repeating the same mistakes. That might. In that moment, I finally understood why this marriage felt so different. Not because Ethan would never let me down. Not because he didn't have female friends. Not because his career would never affect us. Not because he somehow built a life where conflict couldn't reach us. It was because neither of us needed the other to disappear to feel safe. I love you, I said. He smiled. Good. Good. I'm married to you. A negative answer would be troublesome. I punched him in the chest. He grabbed my hand and kissed it. After a while, we went back inside. There was no drama at the door. No ex-boyfriend wanted to speak to me. No woman honked outside. No final confrontation. For a long time, I felt this meant something was missing from the story. I thought Jason needed to see me. I thought Morgan needed to fail. I thought Ethan needed to prove he had a winner. But none of that happened. And that was the key. Jason once left our wedding because he said he'd made a promise to Morgan. 4 years. I'd been watching Morgan. Why did she propose? Why did she need him to choose her? Why did she enjoy embarrassing me? Eventually, I realized these questions were distractions. Morgan never promised to marry me. Jason did. The worst thing he did wasn't leaving. It was knowing it would hurt me, yet assuming I would forgive him. That was a pass I unknowingly gave someone. I called it understanding. I called it maturity. I called it trust. What I really meant was, you might hurt me, and I'd try harder to understand it than you try to stop it. I don't live like that anymore. I still forgive. I still compromise. I still believe everyone should have room to make mistakes. But love isn't unlimited permission. Trust isn't silence. Being agreeable doesn't mean having no boundaries. Being a good wife doesn't mean proving you can handle everything your husband brings. At my first wedding, I stood in the church watching a man leave because he said, I promised her. At my second wedding, Ethan's phone rang minutes before the ceremony began. I asked him if he was leaving. He turned off his phone, took my hand, and looked at me as if I had never asked that question. No. He said. Today. I made a promise to you. This time. The person standing beside me understood the meaning of that promise.